Israeli army discovers bodies of militants in Hamas tunnels. Ukraine battles on two fronts, diplomacy and war. Hong Kong leaves 128 dead, dozens still missing. Tunisia jails opposition business and media figures in sweeping sentences. Good afternoon, welcome to the World in 30 Minutes on Politics and Business Television. I'm Fatima Abubakar Oyibo. Many thanks for joining us. Details of these news stories and more content to come after the short break. Welcome back. Now the news in details. The Israeli military says it has discovered the bodies of militants inside Hamas tunnels during ongoing operations in Gaza. According to officials, the tunnels formed part of a vast underground network used by Hamas for attacks and smuggling, and the militants were killed in recent clashes. The army described the find as further evidence of the scale of subterranean warfare being waged in the conflict. Military sources report that the tunnels were equipped with weapons and supplies, underscoring the challenges Israeli forces face in dismantling the underground infrastructure. The discovery comes as Israel intensifies its campaign against Hamas positions with strikes targeting suspected hideouts and supply routes. Officials say the operation is aimed at weakening Hamas's ability to launch attacks. The development has drawn international attention, with observers warning of worsening humanitarian conditions in Gaza as fighting escalates. Human rights groups have expressed concern over the impact of tunnel warfare on civilians, while global leaders continue to call for restraint to prevent the conflict from spreading further across the region. Meanwhile, the Syrian government has denounced recent Israeli incursions and airstrikes that left 13 people dead, labeling the actions a war crime. Officials in Damascus say the attacks targeted residential areas and critical infrastructure, accusing Israel of violating international law and escalating tensions in the region. The strikes followed reports of militant activity, but Syria insists civilians were among the casualties. The condemnation has drawn global attention, with regional observers warning that the incident could further destabilize the already volatile Middle East. International bodies are being urged to investigate the strikes as humanitarian groups raise alarm over the growing toll on civilians. The development underscores a deepening conflict between Israel and its neighbors, with calls mounting for restraint and accountability. In the meantime, reports indicate that the United States appears to be backing a plan that will divide Gaza, with reconstruction efforts focused on the Israeli-controlled side. The proposal is set to involve rebuilding infrastructure and housing in areas under Israeli oversight, while leaving questions unresolved about governance and humanitarian access in other parts of the territory. Development has sparked debate among regional observers who warn that such a move could deepen divisions and complicate peace efforts. Critics argue the plan risks sidelining Palestinian interests, while supporters say it could destabilize parts of Gaza and pave the way for long-term rebuilding. The issue is expected to remain at the center of international discussions on the future of the conflict. In another development, President Donald Trump has declared that the United States will temporarily halt migration from what he described as third world countries. While he did not specify which nations will be affected, Trump emphasized that the policy aims to ensure only individuals considered a net asset to the country are allowed to remain. The announcement has sparked immediate debate, with critics warning of potential diplomatic fallout and human rights concerns. The president's remark come amid broader discussions on immigration reform and national security. Analysts say the move could reshape U.S. migration policy and strain relations with countries likely to be impacted. Advocacy groups are already voicing opposition, calling for clarity on the criteria and urging the administration to balance national interests with humanitarian obligations. In Geneva, Ukrainian officials are pushing back against a proposed peace plan backed by U.S. President Donald Trump, arguing that the deal would force Kyiv into concessions that undermine its sovereignty. The talks have drawn global attention as Ukraine insists that any agreement must guarantee territorial integrity and long-term security, warning that Russia has yet to show genuine commitment to peace. Meanwhile, on the battlefield in Pokrovsk, Ukrainian forces continue to resist heavy assaults from Russian troops. The fighting underscores the dual challenge facing Kyiv, defending against Moscow's military offensive while navigating intense diplomatic pressure abroad. Analysts say the outcome of both fronts could shape the future of the war and Ukraine's place in the international order. In a landmark event, Pope Francis and the Ecumenical Patriarch of Constantinople, Bartholomew I, came together in Turkey to mark a significant milestone in Christian unity. The meeting held in Istanbul focused on strengthening ties between the Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox churches, which have been divided for centuries. Both leaders emphasized dialogue, reconciliation, and shared responsibility in addressing global challenges. The historic encounter has been hailed as a step towards healing long-standing divisions within Christianity. Religious observers say the meeting underscores a growing commitment to cooperation on issues such as peace, climate change, and humanitarian aid. The event has drawn worldwide attention, symbolizing hope for greater unity among Christian communities across the globe. You're still watching The World in 30 Minutes live on Politics and Business Television. Still to come, flood deaths climb to 174 in Indonesia. Crisis spreads across Southeast Asia. Stay with us. Welcome back. Rescue operations at the site of a massive blaze in Hong Kong have concluded, with officials confirming 128 deaths. Emergency teams battled through the wreckage for days, pulling survivors and victims from the charred remains of the building. Authorities say dozens are still unaccounted for, raising fears that the final toll could climb even higher. The fire, one of the deadliest in Hong Kong's recent history, has sparked widespread grief and calls for accountability. Investigators are probing the cause of the inferno, while families of the missing wait anxiously for news. The tragedy has drawn international attention, with leaders and humanitarian groups offering condolences and urging stronger safety measures to prevent future disasters. Meanwhile, the death toll from devastating floods in Indonesia has risen to 174, with thousands displaced as heavy rains continue to batter communities. Officials say rescue efforts are ongoing, but widespread destruction of homes and infrastructure has hampered relief operations. The disaster has overwhelmed emergency services, leaving many survivors in urgent need of food, shelter, and medical care. The crisis is not confined to Indonesia, as neighboring Southeast Asian countries are also grappling with surging floodwaters. Rising casualties and mass evacuations have been reported across the region, prompting calls for stronger cross-border cooperation in disaster management. Experts warn that climate change is intensifying extreme weather events, making Southeast Asia increasingly vulnerable to deadly floods. Meanwhile, more than 50 people have been confirmed dead following devastating floods in Sri Lanka as heavy rains continue to wreak havoc across several districts. Rescue teams are struggling to reach affected communities, with homes, roads, and farmlands submerged under rising waters. Officials say thousands have been displaced and emergency shelters have been set up to accommodate survivors. Authorities warn that the death toll could rise further as dozens remains missing, and weather forecast predicts more rainfall in the coming days. The government has appealed for international assistance, while humanitarian groups are mobilizing to provide food, medical supplies, and relief to those hit hardest. The disaster underscores the growing vulnerability of the region to extreme weather events. Well, back in Africa, authorities in Guinea-Bissau have announced the easing of a nationwide curfew and the reopening of borders, days after military takeover plunged the West African nation into uncertainty. The move is seen as an attempt to restore normalcy and reassure citizens as soldiers continue to maintain a heavy presence in key areas of the capital. Officials say the decision will allow economic activities and cross-border trade to resume, though restrictions remain in place to prevent unrest. Regional bodies and international partners are closely monitoring the situation, urging dialogue and a swift return to civilian rule. The developments highlight the climate in Guinea-Bissau, where coups and instability have long shaped governance. Meanwhile, Tunisia's judiciary has handed down lengthy prison sentences to several opposition politicians, business leaders, and media figures, intensifying concerns over political freedoms in North African nation. Authorities say the convictions stem from charges ranging from corruption to threats against state security, but critics argue the move is part of a broader crackdown on dissent. The verdicts have drawn sharp reactions both locally and internationally, with rights groups warning that Tunisia's democratic gains are at risk. Observers know that the changed sentences could further polarize the political climate as opposition parties and civil society call for transparency and respect for human rights in the country's governance. And that wraps up the program, but before we go, the headlines again. Israeli army discovers bodies of militants in Hamas tunnels. Ukraine battles on two fronts, diplomacy and war. Hong Kong blaze leaves 128 dead, dozens still missing. Tunisia